a M off a daily fantasy. His number too high, then I'm probably fading him. He been on the road, he gon' eat up my salary. I hit a buy, he gon' lie before lock. Play back to back, then I probably won't pick on the DFS bachelor, good as it gets. Bit a few liners and hit me a leg. He had a good game, but that might be a trick. Log in the Slack so I know who to pick. Sharing our liners, we all gon' get rich. New to this game, you should come to the pad. You might want some cash and get a good laugh. DFS sports, we gon' run up a bag. He heard every game and it's making me mad. You buying your lineups, I think you a cheater. DFS bachelor, he the new leader. Yeah.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Bachelor Pad. I, of course, am your host of DFS Bachelor. And when it's final look for our DFS main slate, we like to double the football knowledge. So we are bringing in my guy from Sportsbook Review, Mr. Donnie Rightside. How you doing this morning, Donnie?
Doing good early. It's like a nice little weekly affair. Like you have that whole week to try to settle in, and then you get Saturday, and it's like, let's take that final look. I enjoy doing it. That mix of DFS and gambling can come together. And what's the goal, Kyle? As always, win some money with it,
That's right. And we've been having a nice, good run. The advice has been great. I mean, we're hitting on these little sleepers. It's tougher to find the sleepers this week. I'll tell you that, looking down there. There are some injuries and stuff to get through, but we're glad to have Donnie. It just doubles the knowledge, and it's been a huge addition to the show. So thanks for being here. We love having you on the show. First things first, get the house cleaning out of the way, everyone's favorite part. If you want my player pool, projections, all that stuff, there's a little arrow on the video. You go to the video description, boom, there's links down there. You can find a link to Draft Dashboard, 30 days for $1. I've got rankings for you, season-long players, top 10 at each position, wide receiver, cornerback matchups, best and worst, all that jazz, NBA player pools, etc., projections. Major League Baseball still going on there as well, so be sure to check that out. Don't forget to check out my friends at Overlay DFS, and also don't forget to go over to rightwager.com. You can find best bets, totals, winning picks all year long from my guy Donnie. I mean, my Twitter feed is full of it every day. Boom, winner, boom, winner, boom, winner. So be sure to check that out. And you see his Twitter handle there as well, so you can find all of his stuff there. You can also find us live 4 times a week, including tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, 1 hour before kickoff, setting you up for everything for this weekend's games. So that link is also in the video description to our channel. Be sure you're over there. You can ask us any questions you want. Gambling, DFS. You want marriage advice from The Bachelor? No, I'm kidding. Do not ask. Do not ask that. And, of course, if you wish to be part of our $50 weekly PayPal giveaway, we're going to announce the winner in just a second. All you have to do is like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment in the comment section. That is brought to you from our friends at Tax Relief Advocates, making your tax debt disappear faster than Donnie's Eagles playoff chances. Right here. Hey. That's a harsh way to start the day. Why did I have to do that? That's just not right. You can give them a call at 1-800-411-9633. And before I forget, our winner this week is Showtime Reacts. So Showtime Reacts, hit me up on Twitter in the comment section. Let me know how to get that to you. Make sure you have a working PayPal or Venmo so I can get that to you. It's very difficult when you don't. It causes me a lot of grief, so make sure to check that out. And, of course, my friends at OverlayDFS.com, a ton of fun over there. So I think that is it. So we've got a lot to get to, so we may as well jump right into the quarterbacks. I'll go over the 6K range, then get your thoughts, and we'll just break it down that way for each position. So for me, looking at quarterback, look, Lamar Jackson, again, is the most expensive quarterback at $8,100 on DraftKings. He's $9,600 on Fanduel. The problem, again, there's so many quarterbacks below him with terrific matchups, so you really need him to be the highest scorer. But I will say this, in tournaments, he's going to be very low owned with that big upside. So if he goes off and he outscores the next, highest quarterback by 10 or 15 points, you've really leveraged the field and made yourself different. So I have Lamar Jackson exposure in tournaments. Of course, Russell Wilson against Miami. I don't think I need to say a ton here. Miami is allowing the 3rd most fantasy points in the league to opposing quarterbacks. He's been absolutely on fire. It's a plus matchup against a banged-up Miami secondary. Chris Carson looks like he's going to play, but he'll be limited. So I like Russell Wilson a lot. I have a ton. Mahomes, I'm a little nervous about, just that secondary, whatever. But people are going to think the same thing, and he's got the upside, so you could throw some Mahomes in there. Josh Allen, I think, has a huge week against the Raiders at $7,300 on DraftKings, 8,600 on FanDuel. Nothing under 33 to start the year. Now, the Raiders have been good against quarterbacks. I think they're about to get a rude awakening tomorrow against this one. The next two guys, Dak and Kyler Murray. I like them both. I have some exposure to both. Cleveland secondary is not very good. Dallas is at home in a must-win. I think I still prefer Kyler Murray this week against Carolina. I just don't trust that Carolina defense. He's a little bit cheaper at $7K on DraftKings. I like Kyler Murray a lot. One concern, DeAndre Hopkins looks like he's going to give it a go, but he's been pretty hobbled by that ankle injury, and Christian Kirk is also a game-time decision, so could be really thin at the wide receiver position for Arizona this week. So that's something I am concerned about. Deshaun Watson, it's probably the first week where I'm like, okay, let's fire up Deshaun Watson. He's at home, Minnesota, barely got to practice this week. Looks like that game is good to go. No positive tests for Minnesota, so I really like that. He's sitting there at 6-6 on DraftKings. I think it's a nice leverage play from some of the top guys with some upside. Hasn't had that breakout game yet this year, but he should have his full complement of weapons tomorrow. Will Fuller was a full participant in practice yesterday with the hamstring, which he always is dealing with the hamstring. So I do like Watson. And then couple other guys, a little outside consideration for Joe Burrow and that matchup against Jacksonville as well. I just like his usage rate. He's either throwing it or running it on 68% of the offensive snaps. So Joe Burrow sitting there at 6'3" kind of stands out to me as well. Looking above 6K, Donnie, what do you like?
Yeah, I mean, you talked right off the bat, Lamar Jackson. As soon as you see that 8,100 or 8,600, wherever you're playing your DFS at, it automatically backs away. It says, well, I don't want to spend that much. Some people are probably going to go for it, but I'm going to spend a little bit less. It's one of those games for me that when you look at, overall gambling, as we like to talk about, it wasn't a very good showing last week in a primetime game versus Kansas City. So you would automatically look towards one of those players who you want to step up in Lamar Jackson, saying, that's not going to happen again. I'm going to throw for 225, 2 touchdowns, and run for another one. But also keep in mind, I don't think the Baltimore Ravens are going to take their foot off the gas late in the football game. So if we're taking a look at Lamar Jackson, not so much about throwing touchdowns, Kyle, late in the game. He's still going to be active for rushing. If I'm looking to take one of those darts and say, is there a good chance that Lamar Jackson might rush for 100 yards this weekend? It's an elite level for a quarterback to do it. This might be one of those spots and also throw 2 touchdowns. I think will end up paying for itself. Then, of course, we take a look at Russell Wilson. It's even better scenario, Kyle, that the defense is so banged up on Seattle that you think Fitzpatrick's going to be able to return fire. So what does that mean for Russell Wilson? Is a bad day for Russ, 275, 3 touchdowns in this game, 2 touchdowns to Tyler Lockett probably again. That's really what it's shaping up to be. But sliding it down, I agree on Patrick Mahomes. He's going up against an elite defensive coordinator, obviously, with Bill Belichick and that Patriots defense. You also have some really good talent on the back end. So theoretically, Kyle, they might be able to slow him down. But yeah, I think Josh Allen has a big day as well. Dak Prescott has a big day. The one guy I do back off a little bit is Kyler Murray. I think those rushing yards are going to be there for him, but I need those explosive plays. You talk about Christian Kirk, one of those guys that can get open deep. Now, Andy Isabella is a speed guy, and we did see, last week that he has the ability to score touchdowns, but also just Nuke Hopkins. You don't want to be left holding the bag saying, I think Kyler Murray is going to have a big week and a game-time decision for your wide receiver, and he doesn't play. Right. Even if he doesn't, he'll still pick up points, but you still want the full-go type of shot. Cam Newton is a really interesting one going up against Kansas City. You saw last week they really shut down Lamar Jackson, but this is one of those games where you have to think that in order to try to press Kansas City, Kyle, you're going to have to get into the mid-20s. That means he's going to be running the football, maybe a chance for 2 touchdown passes in that game, but also one, we'll get to in just a moment, who's just below that level. I like even more. Joe Burrow, now with Joe Mixon showing up on the injury report, maybe they do throw a lot more in that game. And I see 2 really bad defenses, a total of 50. So you might look for one of those games where Joe Burrow, again, throws for 50 plus times in this one. Yeah,
I completely agree. And he's got a little bit of that rushing up. We've seen the athleticism. So if things break down, he could run the ball. I think he might be a sneaky play this week. And I think you make a great point about Cam Newton. Do you guys see why we got to double the knowledge here? You can't have me at 8 in the morning slobbing through this, forgetting things. You know what I mean? So great job on the Cam Newton call. If we go under 6K, I mean, the first guy that stands out for me is Matthew Stafford. He's sitting there at 5.9 on DraftKings, 7.2 on Fanduel. The Saints have already been torched by opposing quarterbacks this year. Guys like, Derek Carr even made him look bad. I know Aaron Rodgers last week. And then even, week 1, I'm already forgetting. Tom Brady, it wasn't horrible against him. 28th against quarterbacks. You look at that injury report for New Orleans, Marshawn Lattimore and Janoris Jenkins out. You've got Jared Cook and Michael Thomas out. The Saints are beat up. Detroit is at home. Still expect the Saints to be able to put up points against the Detroit defense, so I think Stafford's throwing the football. Hasn't had that huge game yet, but I like the price. I know it's a good matchup for Baker Mayfield. I just can't do it. I just don't see him getting those elite fantasy numbers. But now I look at Drew Brees at 5,800. It's pretty cheap for Drew Brees. Now I usually prefer Drew Brees at home, and I especially prefer him with Michael Thomas. Still put up a 24 last week.
By the way, Kyle, real quick to cut you off. Breaking news. I know this gets taped a little bit later. Cam Newton has tested positive for coronavirus. So that is huge news. And it's funny. We just went over how he might be a sneaky play. That is massive news coming across the wire right now. So there it is.
Wow. Yeah, this will be out, half hour after, as soon as YouTube lets it process after we record it. So it'll be, that is crazy news. So that's something to watch that entire game now. Are they going to even play that football game tomorrow?
Oh, this is bad. Yeah, this is bad news. I hope so. Yep.
Oh, that is bad news. Wow. That is breaking news. I wish I had a da-da-da splash on there. Holy shit. That is big news. Tomorrow. So something to really keep an eye on. I would really hold off throwing Kansas City and New England players in your lineup right now after that news. Looking down lower, Kirk Cousins against Houston sitting at 56. I don't think that's terrible. I think they have to throw the football. I think Houston puts up points, and Houston's a vulnerable secondary, so I don't mind Kirk Cousins. I don't play him a ton. It's one of those guys I just don't jam into my lineups very often, but 56 I could get there. Then you get to the real gem of the lower price, and that's Ryan Fitzpatrick against Seattle. Quentin Dunbar and Jamal Adams out. 5-4 on DraftKings, 7-1 on Fanduel. They're going to throw the football. They're going to throw it a ton. I actually think I think Seattle's on upset alert tomorrow. I know that you like that play as well. We certainly agree on that. We saw that, go to sportsbookreview.com. You can find Donnie's Banker each week, and right there on the Twitter page, he gives it away for free. I mean, what else can you do? If it's free, it's me, what Donnie always says,
there it is.
Right?
Absolutely. I was going to say, man, you stole that from me. I was like, thank you for the credit.
That's right. I gave you the credit. Yeah. I steal tons of stuff from Donnie all the time. I mean, how do you gotta learn? 5-4 DraftKings, 7. Seattle allowing the second most fantasy points in the league to opposing quarterbacks. They're at home. Nice total here. 54.5, 55. It's going up. I like Ryan Fitzpatrick quite a bit, and I think that's it for me in terms of quarterbacks under 6K. What do you like down here?
It's under 6K. You're right. Matthew Stafford comes right to mind in this. And also one of the shocking things is you say, Drew Brees is going up against Detroit. When would you ever see him priced like 5,800? That's basically a middling quarterback when you figure it's usually a high octane offense. But obviously Michael Thomas going to miss this game. And if you're into dump downs to the running back, and that's the way you want to try to build your football team, Drew Brees will be your guy. But also, Matthew Stafford should be a decent play. But don't leave out Gardner Minshew. You saw over the first couple of weeks when he had DJ Chark active at wide receiver, which he should have on Sunday. That's a full complement of wide receivers, and also coming from a perspective, the Cincinnati Bengals, who were supposed to get Geno Atkins back this week on the defensive line. He's not going to play. And also last week, Daniels is also going to be out in the defensive line. So a banged up, already horrendous defense. You're going to get a full go Gardner Minshew with his full complement of weapons. And also keep in mind, in the NFL, it's always a nice plus to get those extra days of rest because the Miami Dolphins and the Jacksonville Jaguars played on Thursday Night Football. And also keep in mind as well, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Cincinnati Bengals, Kyle, played 5 full quarters to a 23-23 tie. So you get that added benefit, maybe a little expended, energy that you didn't need to. Healthier squad coming in. I think Minshew does have a pretty big day, and I think he's priced at one of those ranges you could take. To say in gambling terms, hold the way, 225, 1 touchdown pass, 2 interceptions, and maybe Nick Chubb has a big day on the ground. But it's just not one of those guys. There's more bust with Baker Mayfield to me than boom. Even though I do think he'll be able to hang around that football game, it's just 375 and 3 scores on a max effort out of Baker Mayfield. So I would stay away from those levels. Nick Foles put up a good defense. Really intriguing name, that Kirk Cousins, because if you're looking from the opposite perspective from the Texans, they should be able to put up points. So you're going to need Kirk Cousins to counter 2 poor, I don't want to say poorest defenses, but not elite defenses that should be able to put up points. Because if you're looking from that Texans perspective, they played 3 of the more elite teams in the NFL. Now you're going to play the team that looks like everybody can put up 30 points on. Kirk Cousins might be in for a big day. And taking a look at DraftKings here, Kyle, 5,600, it's not bad. Now, if you are really bargain shopping, you take a look at Derek Carr. Not because you think he's going to win the football game, but if there's a chance that they could be down 2 touchdowns in the second half. We've seen that Buffalo defense, Kyle, give up a lot of points, a lot of yards over the first couple weeks of the season. That's a real sneaky play at 5,300. And if you're really willing to dip in and say, I don't want to spend any money at quarterback. This is a dangerous play to take, and that would still be Dwayne Haskins at $5,000. There's a chance he might get benched in this football game, but if he doesn't, you're looking at a 14-point line. If they're just trying to work things out and you spend $5,000 on a guy who throws for 225 and 2 scores and maybe picks up some rushing yards, if you want to build your team and spend a lot of money at running back or take some high-end weapons at wide receiver, that is your ultimate boom or bust at $5,000 because he might be able to scrape that 15 to 20-point level that you need to say, all right, he already paid for himself, but also at the end of the first quarter saying, why did I take this guy, Kyle? Why did Donnie tell me to take this guy? And he's benched already. That's why he's $5,000. So there you go.
That's right. Yeah, Dwayne Haskins. I always like to play the defenses against Dwayne Haskins. I'm just waiting for those picks.
I agree.
I think it might be a hard. I would be afraid to be him tomorrow. I think Baltimore is pissed. I just think they're pissed. Man, that's one other thing about that Patriots news. It looks like they've done widespread testing and no one else is testing positive, so that's good news for the game.
Yeah.
But now, wow. So we're looking at Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer down there. I mean, you want to take a real boomer bust. There you go. 1 day's notice, jump in, maybe a little Justin Herbert type action like he did against that same Chiefs defense, as a matter of fact. Going to running back, looking at the top, you got to love Kamara. I don't think I need to spend a ton of time on that. No Michael Thomas. He's going to be targeted double-digit times, so you got to love him on DraftKings. He's $8,000, and there's not a bunch of super cheap options this week, so it is hard to fit him in your lineups. But if you can, and I'm trying, I've got him in a few. Yeah, you just end up playing someone you don't like. You know, which you have to do in DraftKings, and cross your fingers and hope they go off. I love Alvin Kamara. Everyone should. He's probably the only lock that I have that I know will get over 20 points without any problems tomorrow. Zeke, I always like running backs in these games with high totals because you never know how many drives are going to... If it's inside the 5-yard line, except for a couple weeks ago when they just insisted on freaking sneaking Dak Prescott into the end zone.
Unbelievable.
Oh, God, that pissed me off so much. He's sitting there at 7-8. I think Zeke's a lot lower owned than, like a guy like Kamara. Right now, we have him projected at 21%. That's a bit high. I have Dalvin Cook projected at 13%, who I like a little more, even against an even worse defense in Houston, allowing the third most fantasy points to opposing running backs. So I can certainly go there. A guy like Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt has been limited in practice all week. So we'll see if he's going to play. Even if he does, you got to think he's limited, and they kind of lean on Nick Chubb. Back-to-back monster outings. He's sitting there at 7,000 and 8.3. I like that. And then kind of going through here, James Robinson against the Bengals. James Robinson has been somewhat of a revelation, right? He was an undrafted rookie free agent. They released Leonard Fournette, and then boom, here comes James Robinson. He's involved in the passing game. He's getting double-digit carries. He's getting into the end zone. The Bengals, of course, a terrible defense, allowing the fourth most fantasy points to opposing running backs this year. He's sitting there at 6.5 and 6.6 on Fanduel. I love that price for him on Fanduel. And then stopping right here at 6K, I think this is the week, especially if Hopkins is limited, where Kenyon Drake finally gets involved in the passing game. They haven't really used him. He's only had 5 targets the first 3 weeks, which is kind of surprising for this kind of offense. Carolina can't stop anyone on the ground. They're the second worst rushing defense in the league, only to the Raiders in terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs. He's sitting there at 6K. Nice high total in this game at 51.5. They're going to really need to lean on Kenyon Drake, so I like him a lot at 6K. What do you like up here?
Yeah, I mean, Alvin Kamara, obviously, on DraftKings looking out 8,000, and he should be, because if you have Michael Thomas out and Drew Brees is still your quarterback, if Jameis Winston might actually be a little bit different because he'd still try to push the football down the field. But if you're looking for a guy that's going to be included, and we did our Monday Night Football show just a couple weeks ago, you can almost pencil in, 60 to 70 yards rushing on the ground and probably at least another 70 to 80 yards receiving, probably 5 to 6 catches. All it takes is one screen pass for Alvin Kamara, and he can certainly hit off that 30, 40-yard gain and score touchdowns. We've seen it. He's a dynamic player. That's why he's so expensive. Zeke Elliott, just a volume guy, right? You're going up against a Cleveland defense. I mean, Cleveland's defense is decent, but you're surprised that he's also one of those plays where I look at every week saying, no matter when you take Ezekiel Elliott, what his price is, Kyle, 75 yards plus and a touchdown, just pencil it in every week with the chance to have an enormous week. Austin Eckler, we know he's going to get a lot of volume, dump-off plays versus Tampa Bay. Nick Chubb now, sort of elevate him a little bit higher because we know Kareem Hunt is banged up. If he plays, doesn't play, you're not going to have an extreme effort from him, so you figure Nick Chubb's going to be centered around everything. Now, the one person I want to bring up is you bring up Robinson here, James Robinson for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah. This tells you everything what you need to know about Jacksonville, because people that are new to DFS, new to the NFL, or even if they're longtime NFL guys, you see the name Jay Robinson for Jacksonville, and you say, I never saw this guy, never heard of this guy.
Yeah.
I have no idea who he is, and he's $6,500 on DraftKings right now. This is one of those guys that, in a typical year, Kyle, you shop around and he's like 3,100 because, hey, maybe he scores, maybe he's a boomer bust guy. That should tell you of how really porous that defense is for the Cincinnati Bengals. He should have a good day, because if you think they have a chance to win, best part about in the fourth quarter, he's still going to be getting touches there. Filtering down, Kenyon Drake is a great one. I do completely agree with you. But from these top-end stacks, like of who you really like, I mean, you're going to spend a lot. And a lot of people, as you said, are going to have Alvin Kamara in there just because it doesn't matter that he's 8,000. He's clearly, to me, the see-through guy this week. We say, you know what? If there's, I'm looking at all these guys, you pick Alvin Kamara and you try to piecemeal those 2 to 3 running backs, because somebody is going to pick somebody off in that 4,500 to 5,500 range. It's going to have a really good week, but you want that rock as your starter. So I can't fault people saying, you know what? I like Ezekiel Elliott or Alvin Kamara high end here.
Yeah, you just want that guy that's not going to shit all over your day, right? Like, you're already
Correct.
stressed out enough watching Red Zone. Like, okay, come on, just get something done here. You know what I hate
Vulture
about
touchdowns. Like, they're not going to, these guys aren't going to get vultured out of their points. At least if they're on the goal line, there's a really good shot that these guys are going to get the rock. So, yeah, I agree.
Exactly. I mean, all those, I figure out a way to find someone getting poached every week. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Although last week was a very good week. Going under 6K, I'm kind of waiting to see if Zach Moss plays. I know it's a toe issue, but the Raiders are so bad against opposing running backs. Dead last in the league. I don't love the price for Devin Singletary so much on DraftKings at 5.9, but he's 6K on Fanduel, which is actually much cheaper. On Fanduel, some people might ask why that is. Fanduel gives you an extra slot for a position, and it's a $10,000 higher salary cap. So a player at 6K on Fanduel is much higher of a value than a player at 6K on DraftKings. So that's the explanation for that. We talked about Joe Mixon popped up on the injury report today. So maybe if he ends up going out, we'll find some value down below at Giovanni Bernard, which would be nice for tomorrow. Darrell Henderson looked awfully good being the lead back for the Rams last week. Now he gets a Giants defense. It's 23rd against opposing running backs. They're at home. They're double-digit favorites. You like those running backs in those situations, sitting there at 5'8" and 6'4". I think Darrell Henderson Jr. makes for an interesting play. Mike Davis really, making a good account of himself, filling in for Christian McCaffrey. 17 targets from Mike Davis. You don't think of Mike Davis that way when you think of him as a bowling ball type runner. But if you're going to get 9 targets, I like him a lot. I think Arizona's defense, 22nd against running backs. I could certainly go there. Then we get to a really nice price player, I think, this week. First time I've liked him this year. David Johnson, 5'6", on DraftKings, 6'7" on FanDuel. The Vikings can't stop anything from the pass to the run. They're 24th against running backs. Nice total on this game, 53.5. It's going up even more, I think, since this number was put on here. But I like David Johnson quite a bit. I know David Montgomery's getting more volume, but I'm probably staying away from that Colts defense right now. A guy like Myles Gaskin at 5K for the Dolphins. High-scoring game. He's going to be involved in the passing game. He has really taken over that job. And if you're paying up for guys like Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett, trying to get that Seattle passing game, coming back the other way in a high-scoring game with some players from Miami, a guy like Myles Gaskin is someone you can afford. So I think he's an interesting play. Rex Burkhead, with James White coming back, that makes it a little more iffy. Now, Sony Michel is on the injury report this week, so that's something to keep an eye on. 4,700, Ronald Jones Jr., back as the lead back. Leonard Fournette is out this week. Chargers defense has been the best so far against opposing running backs, number 1 in the league, but at 4.7, you're going to get all that work in the Tom Brady offense without Chris Godwin, possibly without Scotty Miller. Ronald Jones out of the backfield. He was still targeted 4 times last week in a more limited role. I think Ronald Jones, especially on DraftKings where you're getting that full point per reception, makes for an interesting play. Some slight consideration for Malcolm Brown for the Rams. If you're looking for some value, goal line work, he'll get some of that at 4,700. We'll keep an eye on Joe Mixon. Giovanni Bernard could be an interesting play at 4,400 if indeed Joe Mixon is out. And then really for me, that's it down there. There's just no one down here that I could see doing. I mean, it's going to happen, I'm sure, but right now I couldn't pick him out of a lineup.
Yeah, this is one of those handfuls where, you load them all in that lottery bucket, mix them up, and you pick one out. Like, hey, look, I'm going to draft, David Johnson this weekend because there's a lot of lump sum here. But again, if you can pick the right ones out of the lump sum, as opposed to just looking at the names, that might be your difference here and where you can pick up some wins and losses. Singletary should be fine because why? It should be points in that game. Over 50 is a total. You're looking at the lead back here still. I do like that pick from him. Also, Henderson Jr., as long as Cam Akers is out, those guys are going to play similar roles. So then you're really going to put him into the forefront, and you're taking a look at a New York Giants team that last week, not a lot of talent came into town, at least name talent for the San Francisco 49ers. They were able to do whatever they want. And also, at the end of the football game, this is a 14-point spread. They should get extra carries in the second half on this one. Mike Davis, again, you're going to talk about a guy, two teams that like to go a little bit more up-tempo on offense. So you're just looking for some volume you can find around 5,700. That's a decent look as well. Ingram, the second. Baltimore, you figure he's going to get at least one touchdown here against the Washington Redskins. They're going to be up in the second half. They're going to be angry. He'll score a touchdown this one. So 5,700, decent price. But David Johnson's a great call on your end because if we're looking at two teams that should be in the mid to high 20s, he's going to be a heavy volume player in this game with a great chance of getting some goal line carries and certainly some dump offs out of the backfield. One of the more intriguing ones, which I usually don't look at, is Montgomery out of Chicago, and that's because Tariq Cohen is going to miss this football game. So coming in this week, he's probably going to get the volume of carries and also maybe sneaky out of the backfield as well. Talking about Nick Foles, who throws that softball out of the backfield where he's not afraid to check it down and dump it off if the pass rush is coming along, and that should be beneficial here to Montgomery. But you're right, when you're looking at that whole setup here for New England, there's going to be more carries tomorrow because Cam Newton's going to be out. But who is going to get those carries and how many guys are going to get them? So when you see guys that are lined up in that 5,000 range for the New England Patriots, they're so hard to figure out because you could peg one and be like, damn, this guy only got 2 carries the entire game. I thought he was going to have a pretty big effort in this one. But as you slide it down, Adrian Peterson may be going up against that New Orleans defense. Might be a look where obviously he's not going to get very many pass catches, but 4,700, what do you want out of those totals? So you can go all the way down the list. You're right. And again, the key here, keep your eye on the prize tomorrow because if Joe Mixon is out in the game that we think is going to be kind of ugly on defense, Giovanni Bernard might be able to get you that 60 to 70 yards on the ground, but also 6 to 7 pass catches out of the backfield from Joe Burrow.
Yeah. I'm actually I don't like to root for injured players, but I'm really rooting for that now so I can get some damn value on the slate. It's just where I'm at on that one. It's a good point about David Montgomery. I'm just always scared about playing Bears running backs. They always burn me. And same with the Patriots. If Rex Burkhead was like 4,100, then I'd be jumping all over that. But now he's around 5K. And I just can't get myself to do it. And that's what she said. Okay, so then we go over. It sounds like a book of short stories like my love
By the
life.
way, Kyle, I hate to cut a DFS guy talking about the Cam Newton situation, right? So now we're looking at Stidham. I assume that they don't change the prices during the week, and you can get Stidham at 4,800 on DraftKings, and that's what his price is going to be now. That's unbelievable going in a game that, again, we think is probably going to need to be in the mid to late 20s. Now you're not paying any. You're 4,800 for a starter against the Chiefs. Yeah. Interesting stuff.
Athletic guy as well, can run the ball a little bit. We've seen him play in the preseason. I've actually won some DFS money playing Jarrett Stidham last year in the preseason. So it's someone I'm going to take a look at because, you know, Belichick's not just going to cave it in and try to lose to Andy Reid. He's going to go out there and try to win the football game. Might be without Sony Michel as well. So you could see a lot of Stidham to James White. It might be an interesting value stack, and you can pay up at other positions. Again, scared money doesn't make money. You got to go for it sometimes. No. So I'll have some exposure to that. You can write that down. I will have exposure to that ridiculous stack tomorrow, and if it goes off, I'll be dancing all the way to the money.
And also, as a quick gambling perspective in that game, because you like to talk about DFS, how it mixes in, most people, what's your first thought there when Cam Newton goes out? They're going to take the game off the board, obviously, but everybody's saying, oh my goodness, they're going to get blown out. Being a gambler for a long time, how much is Cam Newton passing-wise really worth in that offense that's going to head into this football game on Sunday? So if that line disappears, which it is at 7, and comes back at around a 9.5 or a 10, you might now be getting value on the New England Patriots. So keep an eye on that as well. It plays with your mind, saying, well, how could you take this team? Yeah. It's not like this kid's walking off the street or a practice squad player. He was supposed to be the starter all offseason, prepared like the starter, and now you're going to get even like maybe an extra field goal in this game. Watch out for Bill Belichick.
Yep. I totally agree. And that's why we need double the knowledge here, folks. Because I 100% agree with all of that. We go to wide receivers, the longest segment of the show. Obviously, we'll go over some wide receiver quarterback matchups as well. At the top, right now you just can't play DeAndre Hopkins with that injury. Now I will say this: if he plays, no, and he's got that questionable tag by him, no one's going to play him. He won't be in anybody's lineup. So if he pulls one of these Luka Doncic busted ankle, goes out, triple double, 40-point triple double, and he goes off, you're going to be really happy. But it's really hard to pay $1,500 more for him than Tyler Lockett against this Miami secondary. 7,000 on DraftKings, 7,500 on Fanduel. He's going to have a nice matchup wherever he lines up. He lines up in the slot 63% of the time, so he's going to see Jamal Wiltz. Let me just tell you, Jamal Wiltz can't do a damn thing. I like both he and Metcalf against that Miami secondary. Probably laying off Tyreek Hill a little bit this week, especially now with that news. It might scare you a little bit. The Chiefs might not feel that, even though I think Andy Reid wants to punt Bill Belichick, so I'm not sure he'd lay off the gas pedal, but a tough matchup against Stephon Gilmore, I will say that. I like Diggs against the Raiders. 6,800 on DraftKings, 7K on FanDuel. They really seem to want to go to him in the red zone. Remember, he had like 3 touchdowns taken away last week on penalties. I like Stephon Diggs quite a bit. Then you get to these Rams receivers, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. They're facing a horrible Giant secondary. It doesn't matter whether it's James Bradbury, Darnay Holmes in the slot, or Isaac Yiadom on the outside, all giving up 0.47, 0.40, and 0.33 fantasy points per route ran against, all targeted over 21% of the time on their defensive routes as well. So you can fire up that Rams passing game. The one thing that would concern you, of course, is are they going to still be doing that in the fourth quarter when they're up by 30 points? So there is certainly some concern there. Amari Cooper against Cleveland. Cleveland's been absolutely torched by wide receivers this year. He's going to be matched up with Denzel Ward, but he's also going to be in the slot. Denzel Ward's not a shadow corner, so he stays on that left side of the defense 100% of his snaps. He hasn't moved from that side one time while playing this year. So then when you start getting Amari Cooper in the slot, you start finding, Tavier Thomas and Terrence Mitchell, a big who's who of who you want to throw at. So Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, all in play in this game. You just hope Cleveland can keep up so that they have to keep throwing the football. Allen Robinson, now that Nick Foles is the quarterback, I like Allen Robinson. It's a tough matchup. The Colts secondary has played really well. He's going to see Xavier Rhodes, who seems to have gotten his shit together this year with Minnesota. But again, he's another one of those guys that stays on the right side of the defense. Allen Robinson plays in the slot 39% of the time. He moves over to the other. He's only on that side of the field on 32% of his snaps. Then you're getting guys like Kenny Moore and Rock Ya-Sin who have been absolutely torched. In fact, they're targeted on 24 and 26% of their defensive coverage routes. So I do like Allen Robinson. I think he's got some good upside. And then we get to Keenan Allen, 6'5" against Tampa. Keenan Allen's another guy who's not going to be shadowed by Carlton Davis. And even if he is, he's just going to look at the targets last week. We brought him up last week. We loved him last week. 19 targets last week. Absolutely incredible. Antoine Winfield Jr. and Jamal Dean on the left side and in the slot. Keenan Allen plays in the slot 50% of the time, 47%. Tampa Bay's been targeted in the slot 26% of their coverage routes. It's their biggest weakness of their defense. So I like Keenan Allen quite a bit tomorrow at 6,500. Robert Woods, we talked about that. I like Robert Woods. Michael Gallup, we like that. Right here, just above 6K, there's actually 3 guys. DJ Chark, I like at 6K. I think he's fine. He's not even on the injury report anymore, so he looks like a full go, and they really need him in that offense. But Tyler Boyd has really kind of emerged as a nice target for Burrow. 6-1 on DraftKings, 6-2 on FanDuel. Jacksonville struggles defensively. We saw what the Miami Dolphins did to them on Thursday Night Football. And if you're just looking at the matchup, he's getting DJ Hayden, who you'd think, hey, DJ Hayden, pretty good player. DJ Hayden's getting torched this year, giving up 0.40 fantasy points per out ran against. And then Kenny Golladay instantly jumps into your, hey, I want to play Kenny Golladay with Marshawn Lattimore and Janoris Jenkins out. Much, much easier matchup for Kenny Golladay at 6K, so I like that as well. I know that was long-winded. What do you like up there?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because there's always with wide receiver, we always like to say this is probably where you're going to win your league or win some money because there's so much value. It's just a matter of what value you pick out. And you're right, DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas, both out. Both would have been, if they were healthy, absolutely monsters on the field versus the 2 teams are going up for it, but you don't have that. Tyler Lockett, just that steady guy. You can almost equate, like the way I said, like Zeke Elliott is really good for the Dallas Cowboys. You're not going to lose out on him. Tyler Lockett's not going to get stoned in this football game. So even if you're paying $7,000, what can you expect at him? 75 yards and a touchdown this one, maybe a couple rushes on a reverse. I do like that play. Tyreek Hill, now that Stidham is out, sort of throws that whole offensive perspective in a way and say, well, usually their game plan won't change because Cam Newton's a quarterback. It doesn't play on defense. It might just be the style that you play where maybe if you came out really on fire, you want to continue it all the way through. Because what happens if we haven't seen Stidham? What happens if he comes in this football game and says, boy, he's not that good? Does that mean Kansas City starts to lean more on the running game, short passing game, saying, hey, you know what? We can really stretch this game out because we're going to win anyway. That's when I do take a step back.
Yeah.
DK Metcalf should be fine. Stephon Diggs should be a good one. Allen Robinson, you're completely correct. And the fact that Mitchell Trubisky got benched and Allen Robinson had a big second half, that is no surprise whatsoever. And if you have any wide receiver on that football team, they love the fact Nick Foles is in because he's going to throw one-on-one. He's going to throw an easy football. And when I'm wide open 10 yards down the field, Kyle, you know what? He's going to put it right on my numbers, easy to catch, as opposed to Trubisky airmailing you. And there's nothing worse as a wide receiver when you're wide open and the ball doesn't either A, come your way or uncatchable your way. That's not going to happen with Nick Foles. I think Allen Robinson is going to have a good week, but the point of all points that you brought up here, the Minnesota Vikings, who cannot stop anybody, and they were right to get rid of Xavier Rhodes. He was horrendous, saying, how could this high draft pick who used to dominate in the NFL and is still relatively young can't play anymore? So Indianapolis picks him up on a flyer, Kyle. There's 100 rated cornerbacks from Pro Football Focus. He's number one. You think
Crazy.
Minnesota could have been able to use him this year, but I can't fault them for getting him because I think it was the right move he had to walk on. But the fact that I'm seeing Xavier Rhodes as the best cornerback in football is absolutely amazing. You look at the Dallas Cowboys wide receivers, Amari Cooper should be fine. Cooper Kupp, I think, is one of those interesting ones because I think Sean McVay likes to run it up the flagpole a little bit, put up a lot of points against the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think he has any pride because when you're an offensive coordinator and the head coach, it's more fun if you have 31 points. Yeah, it looks great. But at the end of the day, when you sit back and say, we just hung a 40-plus spot on the New York Giants, and that was my offense, don't be surprised if those guys go off at the wide receiver position in that game. Keenan Allen, I like it. And you say, hey, what? He's a rookie quarterback going on the road against a really good defense. The one thing you like is back-to-back starts from the rookie, Kyle. Over 300 yards passing. Somebody's got to catch it, and Keenan Allen's going to be that A-plus guy. Mike Evans for Tampa Bay. Going up against, obviously one of the better cornerback tandems, or I should say secondaries in the NFL so far, playing against the pass. But somebody's got to catch the ball. Godwin's going to be out. Scotty Miller might be out in this game. Obviously, we already know Leonard Fournette's out. So the catches have to go somewhere, and I still point there. But also 6,100. I bring this up. I talked about it last week. Joe Burrow really likes Tyler Boyd. Yeah. A.J. Green gets a lot of the attention, and he's that sneaky second option. You even saw T. Higgins go off last week for a couple touchdowns against the Eagles. Yeah. I like him down there, 6,100.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think those are great points. And just to touch on the Tyreek Hill thing again, looks like the Patriots were supposed to leave today at 1 o'clock. That flight is now not leaving, and they're on standby with the players leaving the facility. So, again, I would be really, really hesitant to put any Patriots or Chiefs players in right now. Just something there's other places you can go anyways. There's plenty of other plays. Looking a little dicey. We'll follow it throughout the day. You can follow Donnie and myself on Twitter, by the way. You see our Twitter handles there. As soon as that stuff comes out, we always have that up on our page as well. So it's certainly something to look into. It's the world we live in, right? It's a crazy world that we live in. It really is. It's absolutely incredible. Looking under 6K, Will Fuller, full participant in practice. You just brought up that Minnesota secondary, Gladly and Cam Dantzler and Holton Hill getting absolutely torched, just banged up. Yeah, Mike Hughes is going to be out as well. He's 5'9" on DraftKings. Huge upside for Will Fuller. Now you worry. Will he run out there, run a little hitch route, and then pull his hamstring and be gone for 7 weeks like what always happens to Will Fuller? But I like the upside. The Vikings 29th against opposing wide receivers. Then we get to some interesting plays here in this price range that I really like. Odell Beckham, I know he's been underwhelming, but that Dallas secondary has been absolutely dreadful. Odell is going to see a bunch of Trayvon Diggs, who's giving up 0.47 fantasy points per out ran against. He's 5,800 on DraftKings. Imagine that last year, the year before, him being in these mid 5Ks with the Julian Edelman. You just wouldn't have seen it. So I like the upside there. I could certainly go to Odell Beckham. I like Devontae Parker coming back for the Dolphins at 5'7". That Seattle defense is banged up as well. Quentin Dunbar's been ruled out. Jamal Adams has been ruled out. So now Devontae Parker is going to see a ton of Shaquille Griffin, who's been getting torched, giving up half a point per route. And Trey Flowers on the other end, who, if you watched that game last week, wherever Trey Flowers was is where they were throwing the football. Now you get Devontae Parker an extra 3 days to rest. He did have that hamstring, and you could sort of see it limit him during that Thursday night game. extra time to rest. The Seahawks have allowed the most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers this year. I think Devontae Parker's an interesting play. We talked about CeeDee Lamb, some of those guys. I do think Justin Jefferson has some value now for the Vikings. We saw him sort of step out of his shell and have 9 catches, 9 targets, 175 yards, a couple of touchdowns against a vulnerable Houston secondary at 5-2. And then you get Jarvis Landry in the slot. We talked about this last week. Tyler Lockett got the Jordan Lewis defense in the slot. He's the worst slot corner in the league. It's the best matchup for any wide receiver in the league. He's giving up nearly 3/4 of a point per route ran against. Got absolutely torched by Tyler Lockett for 3 touchdowns last week. Jarvis Landry has not had a good start to the season. Only 13 targets. Hasn't done much. This could be, it's hard to trust the Browns receivers because Baker Mayfield is so unpredictable, but he certainly has some consideration there. Then you look at some double-digit underdogs who are going to have to throw the football. Darius Slayton against the Rams is kind of interesting. You hope he avoids that Jalen Ramsey coverage, but he should see a ton of targets. If you're looking for a boomer bust tournament guy, I could certainly go there. A guy like Emmanuel Sanders at 4.8, awfully cheap now with Michael Thomas out. Randall Cobb at 4.8, and that's against that Minnesota wide secondary. In the slot, he's going to see Holton Hill. He's been targeted 10 times the last couple of weeks, double-digit fantasy points there. Just looking at some value. Cole Beasley in the slot. I mean, he's just been a target monster. 20 targets, 3 straight double-digit fantasy point efforts with the game and a high total on the road. Maybe they need some Cole Beasley. There's not a ton of great value, so that's why I bring some of these guys up. Keelan Cole. I know that everyone's like, oh, DJ Chark is back. He only had 5 targets last week. Well, he had his most effective games when DJ Chark was there, taking some of the attention off of him. Now you get this Bengals defense. He's 4,500 with double-digit upside. He, Brandon Cooks, and T. Higgins all in that 4,500 range. I think Brandon Cooks has some big upside too. Andy Isabella, we mentioned him earlier, had the 2 touchdowns last week on 4 targets. Christian Kirk and Hopkins questionable, so I could consider that. Let me just remove. I was going to talk about Sammy Watkins, but that game is just off the board. For me, Larry Fitz, I think I had one guy down here. I can't remember. Jakeem Grant. If you're looking for a boomer bust guy in a high-scoring affair, Jakeem Grant, he's sitting down here at 4K, I believe. I thought I just passed his name. Passed him right by. He's going to kind of share that slot role with Isaiah Ford, which makes it scary. But when he gets the football in the open field, he can go all the way. And look, that Seattle secondary is terrible. So if I'm looking for one of those, throw a dart at a dartboard and hope he gets one of these long screen passes or breaks loose and breaks the slate, Jakeem Grant might be a guy I look at for the Dolphins. What do you like down here, Donnie?
Yeah, I think there's some decent shots, and specifically all the way down that 4,000 range. But before we get down there, Will Fuller, obviously, if he's healthy, he has a chance to catch a deep shot in that game. Here's the one interesting one. Terry McLaurin, he's got a banged-up thigh injury and didn't practice Friday. And usually in NFL terms, you have to get on the field and practice on Friday. If you don't, there's a really good chance you're not going to play on Sunday. And then I look at the Washington Redskins, what they're actually playing for right now, and maybe what their front office is looking at. Because if you're Ron Rivera, your guy is not Dwayne Haskins. You didn't draft him, and maybe you already have your eye on somebody else coming up. Is this one of those games where you say, look, Terry, you're going to be a big part of our future. Don't want to get you hurt, sit down. But we're still going to run out our quarterback, Dwayne Haskins. And if he's really bad, I can turn around the management. Hey, look, this kid can't play. I need to get some other guys some looks, and we're going to draft a quarterback next year and win 2 games this year. It's a really interesting spot you put him in. But Odell Beckham Jr., 5,800, one of those guys, again, that's boomer bust, where you can see him catching 1 catch, 50 yards in the first half, maybe tack on a couple over the middle, because we're expecting a lot of points in that Dallas game, and it brings up that same Jarvis Landry shot. Somebody's going to have to score, because if we're surprised by an outcome, I would be surprised if the Cleveland Browns end up with 17 points in this game. So one of those wide receivers should have a really good day. The one that's really interesting, and I know it's off a lot of people's boards now when you take a look at that New England game, if it even plays, but Julian Edelman now coming in with Stidham, who's been in that system for a long time, you might be looking at some elevated dump-off passes over the middle. So if we're taking a look at him at 5,700, and if that game goes off, that's not a bad price to pay. More going down the list, T.Y. Hilton, 5,300. You never see him really that level, but somebody's going to have to catch passes in that game, because now Nick Foles is on the opposite side. 43, 44 is a total, which isn't high, but T.Y. Hilton could be that boomer bust guy. And we're not paying $6,500, $7,000 like you would in the past. He's sitting there at $5,300, but I want to slide it down all the way into that $4,000 range. Cole Beasley out for the Buffalo Bills. You think you're going to have a high-scoring game? He's a sneaky slot weapon over the middle. Also, when you take a look at the bottom of the barrel guys, 4,600, Golden Tate, you say, well, wait a second, Donnie. The Giants absolutely stink. If they're getting blown out, Daniel Jones is still going to be throwing in the fourth quarter, and somebody has to make those catches. And you're talking about 4,600 there where, hey, if they're down, let's just say 31-14 in the fourth quarter, and he has 3 catches for 30 yards and a touchdown under 2 minutes to go, it all cashes the same. You don't have to get it in the first quarter. As long as it comes in, it's certainly worth your while. But really heading down, Brandon Cooks, 4,500, a really good shot to score, and he's very cheap at that level. And, sliding it down to, and again, if Kansas City plays, as we like to say, Sammy Watkins, McCole Hardman, you saw him last week, $4,300. If he goes 1 catch, 50 yards, touchdown, he pays for himself. But even if you're down there in those deep leagues and he catches 3 balls for 40 yards, he's only $4,300. At least you don't starve at that point,
Yeah, completely agree. And one other guy I forgot to mention is Willie Snead down there at 4,000. When you look at the Washington secondary, it's actually been pretty good, but the one spot where teams have been targeting has been Jimmy Moreland in the slot. He's been targeted on 26% of his coverage routes. So Willie Snead, Lamar Jackson down there, little play action fake, rolls out, Snead's open, touchdown. He pays for himself down there at that cheap price. But that's basically it for wide receiver. Whew, there's a lot to get to at wide receiver every week.
There it is, man.
I like that. Jumping ahead now to the tight end position, and this is a position I always pay down at. I very rarely pay for the top price guys, just because I'm paying up at the real value spots at wide receiver and running back. Probably the most expensive for me that I would go this week is Darren Waller at $5,200 for the Raiders. Buffalo actually has been susceptible to tight ends this year, 23rd in the league. Mike Gesicki coming back against Seattle. Again, I like that Miami-Seattle game. I know there's a little bit of rain concern there, but you expect Miami to have to be throwing the football. Should be a close game. Banged up secondary. Gesicki in the red zone. They like going to him there as well. The team who's been the worst so far against tight ends, the 2 worst teams, Cleveland and the New Orleans Saints. TJ Hawkinson sitting there at 4,800. I think he's a little interesting as well. Hunter Henry has been great, even with Joe Burrow, though. 15 targets in his 2 starts, turning that into 24 DraftKings points. Then Evan Ingram's really cheap. Evan Ingram's now 4,400. You just don't normally see that. The Rams 22nd against tight ends. I don't play a ton of Evan Ingram, but the bottom line is he's healthy. He's playing 92% of the offensive snaps. That big game is coming when you look at those perimeter corners for the Rams, shutting down those receivers. Evan Ingram could have one of his better days this year. 4,400 is awfully cheap. And then a guy I put in my Core 4 video yesterday, Cleveland again, allowing the second, third most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Dalton Schultz is at 4,300 for the Cowboys, 4,900 on Fanduel, 16 targets over the last 2 weeks since taking that job over for Blake Jarwin. I think Dalton Schultz is interesting. And then one guy, Jimmy Graham, Gronkowski at 33. I like them. Logan Thomas still gets the targets. He just hasn't been getting there. Now, I will say this. Baltimore, allowing the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends. 24 targets over the last 3 weeks. 3,500 for Logan Thomas. And for those of you who really like to dig deep down here and go under 3K, Jared Cook has been ruled out. Drew Brees likes his tight ends. Young man, Adam Troutman, 2,500 on DraftKings. Could be one of those sneaky dart throws. Hasn't done much this year, but again, no Jared Cook. So you're going to see more Adam Troutman on the field.
Yeah, some of these brick hand guys, like they like to talk about Evan Ingram, it's almost like you have no choice. You see him at 4,400. He's fast, and if he does catch the ball, they should be down, and they should be throwing in that game. It seems like one of those no-brainers where you take a shot and say, you're either going to get 2 catches for 14 yards and like 3 drops, or you could get 5 catches, 75 yards, and a touchdown. At that price point, 4,400, certainly stealing. Mike Gesicki, who this absolutely has been amazing this year, a one-on-one guy, and you have the ultimate boomer bust quarterback that says, hey, Mike, if you're one-on-one out there, I'm throwing you the football. He's been electric this year, so 5,100 for Gesicki. is not that bad considering you're really going to have to answer the bell when you go against that Seattle Seahawks team. Sliding it down a little bit, Schultz, you're exactly right. 6 targets last week, 48 yards. So if you can have those same repeat efforts at that 4,000 to 4,300 range in a game we think are going to get points, sooner or later he's going to score a touchdown. I think this is a very good week that he might be able to do it. How about Mo Alley Cox with the hot start?
Yeah.
Obviously, those athletic tight ends, Phillip Rivers, Antonio Gates, now turn it over to Mo Alley Cox. All it takes is one touchdown, 3,900. You can flip it over, even though Indianapolis has played very well against the tight end position. Jimmy Graham seems like to be one of those tight ends that Nick Foles is going to give a shot to down in the red zone and has the ability to get him the football. Continuing to go all the way down the list, the O.J. Howard's out here, and you're just trying to, take a shot. Ian Thomas in that situation. It's really pick or choose. Dan Arnold, he's real talented down there. But those are the guys that say, man, he had one target and 3 yards in his game. So I would keep it simple in this. I wouldn't overpay because everyone wants to take the Travis Kelce's even if they didn't play. Waller's if I'm going to pay, it's going to be Waller for me because I expect Buffalo here, Kyle, to be in the 30s. You're going to have to throw the ball a lot, and he's a dominant player. So if I'm going to pay up for a tight end, it's probably going to be Waller or even Gesicki at that spot. But as much as I hate Evan Ingram, I see him there at 4,400 and say there's a really good chance late in that game he's going to be able to do some damage.
Yeah, it feels like a damn trap, but I'm going to fall right into it. Hook, line, and sinker. I'm going to fall right into it. He and Schultz right there I think are really interesting. And I guess Gronk at 3,300, look to be trying to get him the football a little more after that, really slow start. And then it kind of went out in the media. And what do you know? The next week, Rob Gronkowski targeted 9 times. Shocking.
Exactly.
That's just what they do. So he
nowhere.
might be interesting. That the tight end position, it can win you $1 million. It really can. You get a guy at 3,500, 4K, gets a couple of touchdowns that no one is playing. And it's really one of the more difficult spots to get consistent production from, especially in DFS. So I like those calls there. And then real quickly, we'll go over some defenses. There's not a ton here. Obviously, the 3 at the top, the Ravens, the Rams, and the Bills. All 3 of them. I think the Ravens have the most upside here. Both the Giants and Washington are very turnover prone. Daniel Jones, I guess you'd probably say, is even more turnover prone with Aaron Donald coming. Strip sack fumble seems to happen to Daniel Jones every single week, right? So lots of touchdown upside for those defenses. So, of course, you like all 3 of them. But just sort of coming down here, maybe the Buccaneers at home against the rookie quarterback at 3,400. They seem to be pretty opportunistic this year. So I could certainly get down with that. I do have a little exposure to the Colts because it just seems like they score a defensive touchdown every week. Now, I think it's a lot less likely with Nick Foles at quarterback than Mitchell Trubisky, obviously. So I prefer Tampa Bay over them, but at 3,300 if you want to take a shot. I will not pay the 4,900 on Fanduel. I think that's way, way, way too much. And then I was trying to find a defense, under 3,000. One of these like deep sleeper defenses who might be able to do something. I'm looking at the Texans at home maybe at 2,500 against Minnesota. We've seen that Minnesota offense look pretty bad. So even though the Texans defense is nothing to write home about, you have a possibly underprepared Minnesota team coming into Houston. Definitely a must-win for Houston, obviously. Finally some breathing room against one of the mediocre teams in the league, not one of the top 3 teams or 4 teams in the league. So I could maybe go there as well. And I almost sniffed at the Lions because of all the injuries for New Orleans, but I just can't do it. And that's basically it for me at defense. What do you like over here?
Yeah, if you're going to pay up on the Ravens, and also the good part about this is if you bet already on New England early in the week because you tried to get a really good line, and you don't get your money. It's not like pitcher with action in baseball. That's the line you get, and you're going to be without Cam Newton, and who knows else for the New England Patriots if they play this game. The good part is if you take the Ravens early in the week, you can always sub out, obviously, before game time comes in. If Terry McLaurin is out, Kyle, I don't know what Washington is actually going to do in that football game. I don't want to say a shutout's in play because that's ridiculous, but you're talking about maybe a half a dozen sacks, a pick or two, maybe a fumble on the ground. They're really going to be getting it after it in that football game. But some of those deep shots I think really make sense from what we were talking about here. The Texans, it's not so much that the Texans are going to slow anybody down, but Kirk Cousins has the ability to take a sack in the end zone, throw a pick 6 at any time. And when you're talking about defenses around that 2,500 to 3,000 range, if you get an interception, the other team still scores 32 or touchdown for an interception, 30 points, and you don't get many sacks. It paid for itself right there just by that touchdown alone. So those are some of the ones that I would look at as well. Maybe the Bears and maybe Indianapolis, depending what the weather conditions in Soldier Field turn out to be on Sunday.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of those defenses this week that you say, you know what, I'm really going to pay up and get it. That's why they're all bunched up in that range. But I do agree with the Buccaneers just from that angle of they played really well this year. They're probably going to have a lead. Maybe you can steal some sacks on a young quarterback and confuse them a little bit. But if you're really paying, if Terry McLaurin sits out, I think the Ravens at 4,000 are a bargain, as crazy as that sounds.
I know. It's hard to look away from it. I have them in most of my lineups right now, them and the Rams. I really do. And I'm just trying to, take some of them dart throws down the board and see what happens. And that's what you got to do sometimes. And we hope it's going to be a great week. That's everything. Again, Donnie, thank you so much for being here. The double knowledge just makes the show so much better. I can't even imagine how many players I would have forgotten this morning. So there we go. The breaking news on the Chiefs-Patriots. Again, guys, make sure you follow that. Again, thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Be sure to check Donnie out over at rightwager.com. Go win some money over there. You can follow him on Twitter at RightSideVP. Thank you all so much for watching. Full player pools in the video description. Click all that stuff. Check it all out. We're going to get the hell out of here in under an hour. May the fantasy gods be with you. We'll be live tomorrow morning, Donnie and I, at Sportsbook Review. The link to that channel is in the video description. You can follow us on Twitter. We'll have that tweeted out. We'll be live 1 hour before kickoff, getting you set up for everything on Sunday. So check us out over there tomorrow morning as well. Thank you all again so much. Goodbye, folks.